today I will speak about Genesis, Eden and Eve. And before the fall. Nothing depressing about what happened, Today is the ideal, How do we want the world to be and how we want to live. And we will also have a closer look at Eve. Because today we are talking a lot about the only begotten daughter. And to understand her, I think we have to understand Eve more in a deeper sense. But first we have to speak about the Bible, how we can understand the Bible. Does this work? No? Yes. This was my grandmother's Bible. So my grandmother, she read the Bible a lot. And of course you don't know how much she understood, but anyway, she read it. People don't read today. It's forgotten and neglected. Also in our church, we don't read it. That's how it is. Yeah, you do. You're the exception. But there's a lot of Buddhism in your and haiku and stuff. So we're kind of drifting away from Christianity. We are drifting away from our roots. But there is truth in the Bible. I mean, our whole society, our whole culture is standing on the foundation of the Bible. But the problem is, how should we understand it? That's the thing. Does it work? Yes. Because the Bible, it's poetry and stories from the Bronze Age. Like an ancient worldview. So we can't read it with modern lenses. Like the target audience, we're supposed to read it, but we were not the target audience. The target audience were the ancient Israelites. And those who were alive when the Bible was written. And that was really thousands and thousands of years ago, such a long time. It's not a trace of modern science. So it's not a scientific book. As an example, like when we say God created the earth, we think about this, the blue planets, like it pops up in our mind. And we think that, okay, Genesis says God just did like this, but with a word, and then this was created. But this was not how the Israelites were thinking, and they had no idea that we were living on a planet, that it was a globe. They only knew that kind of part that they were living in. For them, Earth, it was like land, and what you stand on. And land is good, because it's terrible if you had to live in the sea. You would drown immediately. So sea, in their worldview, land good and sea very, very bad. That's how it is. So when we read the Bible, we have to try to understand how an ancient reader would have understood it in its own context. Then we can get the truth. And that's how the Bible can make sense. Actually, there are, I don't know, 50 or 100 years ago, the Bible scholars, they were reading the Bible in a completely different way. But now, Bible scholarship, they are thinking in this way. Okay, we cannot understand the Bible if we don't understand the cultural context. So there's a lot of new knowledge out there. So first I have to say, you might be shocked what I'm going to say today and say, how can it be? But everything I say is from Bible scholars, so I don't make anything up. Of course, there are people who disagree, but they are just boring people, so we don't listen to them. Anyway, but why do I have this interest in the Bible? No, you see, in January, I had, I promised myself, I have to read through the Bible and do it the way people do. You start from the beginning, so I started from the beginning. Of course, I read a lot before, but not really like everything, So I started from the beginning, and it went very well in the beginning. But then there are these instructions how to build the tabernacle. I mean, it's pure pain, I have never experienced anything so excruciating. It was like, how do people survive this? I can't understand, So I was looking like, how can I learn? I need some commentaries, But anyway, but then I found some books to read, and one scholar, Dr. Michael Heiser, he said he knew Hebrew very, very well, biblical Hebrew, and he said, if you read about Eden, for example, in Hebrew, and then read about the tabernacle, and then read about the temple, same words are coming up all the time, So, I've heard this word before and that. So it's like ping, 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 ping in your brain. It's like a method. Like you connect different parts. You can connect what happened in Eden, and what happened in the covenant and temple and New Jerusalem, everything. It's like everything is connected. But you have to know Hebrew to understand this, otherwise it's hard to catch, And you are supposed to think that way. Of course, I can't think that way, but I can read what other opinions are. Yeah. So anyway, it all starts with Genesis. And why Genesis is important? Because it contains seeds. It's the story of the Bible starts there, and all the themes that are developed and thought of, they start in Genesis. In the first few pages, everything is there. So we know God created the world, and including us. So we are not created by ancient aliens. If somebody says that, you have to tell them off. We are created by God. So why did he create us? Well, we know from D.P. that he didn't want to be alone. And it's also clear when you read Genesis, because God says it's not good to be alone. He wanted a family. No robots, no puppets. He wanted people with free will, which is a huge risk, because something can go wrong, But anyway, that's what God wanted. And he did it just with words, like a king, because that's how people understood God long thousands of years ago in the Bronze Age. It was like a king, and when kings gives an order, like it happens, like build a house, and then the house is built. But the Bible is unique. As a contrast, we will have a look at Enuma Elis. What is this? This is a Babylonian creation myth. And I learned this from Jordan Peterson. Jordan really likes this myth. So it's a bit crazy. But if you hear this, you understand that our creation myth, God, is very, very different, because how they believed about gods, this Enuma, that's how people believed in this area. So one day, the young gods in Babylonia, they killed their father, and they were so happy about they had killed their father. But the mother was very, very upset. She didn't like this. So the young gods, they didn't know what to do, so they found a guy called Marduk. He was also kind of a god with occult knowledge, and he killed the mother. So the gods were very happy. And then heaven and earth was created from this evil, evil mother. And we humans, we were created from a demon. So and all humans were slaves because the God shouldn't work. We were slaves. And it almost killed Marduk to do this. So this is just, we don't understand how Genesis, how the Bible, how different it is. because this story about Marduk, there are hundreds of these stories all over Mesopotamia, and this is what people believed. It was just these tiny, small people who didn't have much military force at all. They believed in Yahweh, in our God. So we should be very grateful that they managed to uphold this faith, actually. Anyway, if we go to Genesis, it's a little bit difficult because Genesis actually has two creation accounts. Like, it tells the same story twice. But the problem is that it's a little bit different each time, so people don't understand it. So why do they do that? Well, they want to explain same thing in different layers, and you're supposed to meditate like. And in one way, they had a lot of time to meditate because no internet, no mobiles. What could they do? They couldn't even watch TV even. So all they could do is actually meditate over the Bible, so they did that. But if we have a look at the first chapter, Genesis, it gives a more panoramic view. So this is a painting by Michelangelo from the Sistine Chapel in Rome. I think you've seen it. It's kind of famous. It's Ha-Adam, also Adam. And what we think is like Adam is a name. But Adam here is not the name. It's man, but mostly in this context, in creation chapter 1, it's more humanity and humankind. It's not a gender. Because Adam, if you read the Bible in Hebrew, Adam only has a gender after creation of Eve. Before, at this point, he has no gender. This is what the rabbinic tradition says. After this, he said, male and female, he created them. So we are created in God's image, both Adam and Eve, we are in God's image. So this is such a big contrast to nations around Israel, because in those countries, in Babylonia, it was only the ruler, the king, who was representative of God. Like all other people were slaves. But we were created as royal, we have dignity, we have free will. So I have to stress this, that it's such a different theology that we are so used to have without reflecting. But apart to this, I have to add something, I have to show you something. Michelangelo, he studied anatomy. But do you know, have you seen this? Yeah, but he was not allowed to do it, actually. He did it secretly. So have you seen this? Like 1990, American brain surgeon walked into the Sistine Chapel and he looked at God and everything, and he saw the human brain. And if you look carefully, everything is there, And what's fascinating, this God part, it's exactly how the brain is divided, like enfolding itself. And the message, what people think, is that God gave life to Adam, but above all, he gave intellect. He gave consciousness. He gave free will. That is, Adam can think, or Adam and Eve can think. So Michelangelo was a bit rebellious, and it took a long time before somebody thought about it or saw this. Anyway, that was chapter 1. If we look at chapter 2, it explains creation but in a different layers. There is focus on humanity, our emotional need for companionship, because when God created the world, he said everything was good. But then he said, no, it's not good for Adam to be alone. But he wanted Adam to come to this realization on his own. And I guess he did, you know. A joke? No. And now we have to really focus on Eve. How was Eve created? This is also a painting from Sistine Chapel, and it's Eve. So I'm sorry, I have to say that Michelangelo, he was not so inspired when he did this. Or what do you think? Nobody have seen this before. But it's there anyway. And it's this sentence, and the rib that the Lord God had taken from the man, he made into a woman. So this is the traditional Christian translation. God took one of Adam's ribs and made a woman. So it sounds simple. One little rib created Eve. And you know, for some reason, we women, we are not so fond of this theory. You know, I wonder why. You know, somehow it's not inspiring, you know. Yeah. But then I know we can have a look at the Hebrew. This is the Hebrew sentence. Of course you don't know. I don't know either. But people who know Hebrew, they say that this sentence is very, very strange. Even in Hebrew, you know. So, and thing is, when you come across strange sentences, you have to think it through. You have to think a little bit deeper, you know, because there is something here. So we will have a look at two words. And do you remember when I talked about ping, ping, ping thing? You know, connection word. Yeah. Good. So let's look at one word, Selah. This word. So this word is used about 40 times in the Bible, but only once is it translated as a rib. So this is what the Jewish classical source says. The Hebrew word Selah means side or lateral flank. It explicitly refers to the lateral outer walls or framework sides of the structure. Also sides, is the structural side. It can be half of a human being. And it can be anatomical, but also architectural. And not just any side. Have a look at this. In the Bible, in the Old Testament, when you speak about the ark or tabernacle and the temple, then you speak about Selah, sides, you know. So the Bible connects Eve to sacred architecture, sacred structure. So in reality, it was never a rib, you know, it was never a rib. So how could this happen? Of course, Selah in some ways also, sometimes also means a rib, but in this context, you know, the problem is that Christian scribes didn't know Hebrew, or they didn't know the culture. So this has always been a problem. There's been a split between Christianity and old Jewish thought. So it's very unfortunate. We understand so little about this. But there is more. I bet you didn't know this, but one more word. So vaiven, this really makes it that it's very strange sentence. So vaiven means he built, he constructed. So this word, God constructed Eve. So this word is used when you build altars and tabernacle and temple. So basically, these two words are used when you build holy places where you meet God. So new translation would be And the side that the Lord God had taken from humanity, he built into a woman. So it's very strange, very, very, very like new kind of feeling you get, you know. God built the side into a woman, and this woman is a sanctuary building, is sacred space. And if you read it in English or in Swedish, you completely miss this point. Anyway, and Adam's response after seeing Eve, and now suddenly Adam is a man, because you can notice that the verb form, they can be masculine or feminine. So now all of a sudden Adam is a man. So he said, bone of my bone, flesh of my flesh. This woman, she's like me, you know. She's not made from dirt. She's not made from like all the animals. She comes from my flesh. So she's like me, you know. This is unity. And it says also in a very, very short way, but anyway, they shall become one. So two shall become one. It's like Chonilguk, already there in Eden as a seed. So Adam and Eve, they belong together. They are a family. So unity and family, this is the ideal. So Eve was not an afterthought. It's not that, oh, I made a mistake, I forgot something, you know. Well, I just take a rib from Adam and I make... Yeah. No. Eve was foundational. She was structural. It was like she was the grand finale of the last thing that God created. It was the culmination of something sacred. So this really signifies equality and partnership. But we have to end with the big picture. I find it very interesting to connect Old Testament and New Testament like an ark, you know. Because if you find something in Old Testament, like the beginning, and then it continues over to the New Testament, then you know you have something valuable. The writers, God wants to tell you something. So this is like an arc to Old Eden, to New Eden. So we started in Old Eden with the seeds there. And actually, we don't know so much about where we will go, the New Eden, but we do know that these things are like family, unity, that we walk together with God, that we live together with God, was really very important in the Old Eden. So we know if it's important in the beginning, it will be important in the end. So this is our goal, you know, this is something we will substantially fulfill and establish. And you see here, like the symbol, Adam, like probably symbolized by the tree of life. And perhaps Eve is symbolized by the city itself. We don't know. Anyway, this is our goal, and we have to set our internal GPS towards this, because this is what we are creating, sacred space. And I think this is what we are fulfilling, kingdom of heaven on earth, and we call it Chonilguk. Yeah, thank you.